This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, jerks?
Manning retired.
Which one?
Both.
I like kickers.
Put him on the board. Hausch Mazzoli. Got it. Championship.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Nerds on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, brought to you by the Fan Up Network. I am Jason Jarvie. Follow me on Twitter at Jarvie the King. Going solo again this week. A little bit later in the episode, I'm going to talk with Yahoo Sports fantasy expert Brad Evans to give us a little bit of breakdown on what's going on with the draft and how he ranks some specific players. We are literally days away from training camps opening, and it's really getting close to draft starting. You know, I've seen, it's not unheard of to have people, hold their drafts at the end of July. So we're getting there. And, some NFL players, they just hate fantasy football. And that's where I got to start my news today, because there's one particular player who absolutely is going to kill you this year. And that man's name is Le'Veon Bell. Just came out today that he is facing a 4-game suspension. This is on the heels of last year. He had a 2-game suspension at the beginning of that season, and then finished out the rest of the year with he tore his MCL and PCL. He's coming back from that injury. We're all excited. And then he goes, there was we talked about it a couple weeks ago, that there was possibility a failed drug test or a missed drug test. He came out, he said there's nothing like that. And now there is, it was basically just a big lie. So the dude obviously has something against fantasy football players, or he just doesn't really care. But either way, it's going to affect everything this year, because, he's more than likely a first-round pick. Even if coming back from the injury, he's a guy who, when he can play 16 games, which he doesn't have a really great track record of being able to play a full 16, but when he can, he really is probably the best running back in the league, especially for fantasy owners, because he is that dual threat. He's a pounding running back, and he can also catch it out of the backfield. And that offense is really set up to have that check down back, and that's what Le'Veon Bell is. And even coming into this year, you were likely going to draft D'Angelo Williams, and now if you do draft Le'Veon Bell, you almost have to draft D'Angelo Williams, and you may even want to look at who's behind him, because D'Angelo Williams is coming back from his own injury. So that running back situation is it's mired in uncertainty. And, going forward the rest of the season, he's likely going to miss 4 games. And on the one hand, you can say it's good because it gives him a little bit more time to heal up the MCL and PCL. But I'm not sure if we have any trust that Bell can come out and give us the rest of that season. You're already missing essentially a third of your fantasy season. So you're going to have to rely on either D'Angelo Williams, who we're not sure when he's coming back, if he's going to be healthy for week 1, or if he's going to be the same running back that he was last year. Either that, or you'd have to draft another running back really high, and that can mess up your draft. And because I know for myself, and what I suggest for people is to, when you're going to draft, is to let the draft come to you and draft the players that have high value and are gonna perform the best for your team. If you go out in the first round and draft Le'Veon Bell, you're essentially you have to work the rest of your draft around that one pick, because in the second through fourth round, you're going to have to take at least 2 more running backs. I realize that running back depth, they can go deeper, but it just immediately hurts you, because unless you're going to get superstars that are going to carry your team, and it's going to be a crapshoot. Le'Veon Bell in the first round it's going to kill people, and it's not my philosophy. I wouldn't want to draft around one guy. I'd rather, if I have a lower first round pick and Bell were to be there, I'd rather take, a wide receiver or even another running back. Maybe I'd take Rob Gronkowski, because those guys I at least think have a better chance of giving me a full fantasy season. So the biggest thing with this possible 4-game ban is he's hurting your team. And when you try to draft players, you draft for certainty, and you're just not getting that from Le'Veon Bell. So moving on to some more news. Another running back who hasn't been in the league for a while, Ray Rice. He hasn't been signed after he had the whole domestic violence issue, and he's going as far now to say that if he is signed, he will donate his entire 2016 salary to domestic violence programs. So, I mean, there has to be something really wrong, or he just does not have it, because I know he's been on some workouts, and I really liked Ray Rice when he was at his prime, and even before he got suspended. I still think he had a little bit left, even though he started to decline. I think he has the talent to be a very good fantasy running back. But obviously somebody's going to have to give him the shot. I know I'd love for my Detroit Lions to give him a shot, but I don't have the keys to the car over there. I don't have the keys to the car anywhere. So I think it's likely somebody's gonna have to give him a shot. I mean, Tim Hightower got the tires kicked on him last year, and he got signed by the Saints. Somebody's gonna need a running back at some point, and I really think Ray Rice, he should be in the mix to be one of those free agents signed. And so monitor him. I'm not saying go out and draft him late in your draft. But definitely keep an eye on him, because if he is signed, he's going to be a very hot waiver pickup, I think. For the Indianapolis Colts, they're saying that running back Frank Gore might see less carries in 2016, which on one hand, you would think that this is bad news for Frank Gore, but I think on another hand, you could say that you're keeping him fresh, you can keep him healthy for longer. And I think the spots that they put Frank Gore in are the key spots. And whenever you talk about key spots, you're talking about the red zone. So that's the big thing with Frank Gore, is you want to make sure that he's still that red zone running back who gets in there. And even though last year he had his lowest yards per average at 3.7 yards, but I think with a healthier and better offensive line on the Colts now, I think Frank Gore, he may not have a gigantic bounce back season, but he could still be a running back who could come in and be a low end running back to maybe more of a flex play. Staying with the Indianapolis Colts, Philip Dorsett is looking to get the start at the slot receiver. Now, you look at teams like the Packers, they run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, and I think that's really what they're looking to do in Indianapolis. They obviously have the quarterback in Andrew Luck, and I know that they're hoping that he returns to the form that he was before last year, when he just had a complete down year and then ended up injuring with a lacerated spleen. This is a team that he's going to spread the ball around. He's one of those type of quarterbacks, and they have T.Y. Hilton and they have Dante Moncrief, but they lost tight end Coby Fleener, and I don't really think they don't have Andre Johnson, they don't have Griff Whalen. Dwayne Allen isn't the biggest receiving threat, so I think Philip Dorsett really could be a pretty decent slot guy. Look at what happens in Green Bay when they have all of their healthy receivers. You have Jordy Nelson and you have Randall Cobb, And then you put James Jones in the mix, and James Jones somehow manages to catch like 9 or 10 touchdowns. So they drafted Dorsett really high a couple years ago, and I think that's what they're gonna hope that they can get out from him. He is a speed receiver, and more than likely, week in, week out, Philip Dorsett is going to be a boomer bust player. But he's definitely has value in drafts. I'm likely drafting him a little bit later in drafts, but I'd probably put him maybe past the midway point in your draft, because I think there is high upside on this team, because with T.Y. Hilton, Dante Moncrief, T.Y. is likely the 1,000-yard receiver. Dante Moncrief is going to get up there around 800 yards. But I still think there's another 600 to 800 yards receiving that Philip Dorsett could get. And then the touchdowns could really go anywhere. If he develops into a really good red zone threat, that just makes it way better for you fantasy owners who were smart enough to go out and draft Philip Dorsett. In New England, we're not talking about Tom Brady. Finally, he's suspended. He's gone. He's gone for 4 games. But moving on to the running back position, LeGarrette Blount, you're going to have to watch his roster status because he's still coming back from an injury. And even though if he's healthy, he's going to have that big back role solidified, with Deion Lewis being the main running back. But if LeGarrette Blount can't really, if he's not getting healthy, if he's not getting the job done, watch him through training camp. And, there is the possibility that he could be cut. He's on a really team-friendly 1-year deal. And if Bill Belichick doesn't believe that Blount can get it done, I could easily see him getting cut. I know they have pretty good feelings about him, but you're going to have to watch his status because you don't want to draft LeGarrette Blount in the 8th round and then have him be cut. Staying in the AFC North, or the AFC East with the Bills. Sammy Watkins he's feeling good with his injury, but there's really no timetable, it's very worrisome because Sammy Watkins, he's being rated as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, and he really is. When he's healthy, he has that ability to be a game-changing wide receiver. We saw that last year when McCoy and Carlos Williams weren't really getting the job done, and Tyrod Taylor kind of emerged. I think Sammy Watkins has that ability. He is a number 1 wide receiver, but if he can't really stay healthy, so you have to go into your draft and your seasons knowing that you're likely not going to get an entire fantasy season out of Sammy Watkins. So, when you're drafting, maybe let him fall a little bit in his ADP. I'm not saying let him, fall a couple rounds. I'm saying let him fall a couple spots. If his average draft position, I don't know it off the top of my head, but let's just say it's 12. I'm saying maybe let him slide 2 or 3 spots from that, because then you're really getting the value, and that, I might not have him for the entire season, but at this point in the draft, it's almost dumb not to take Sammy Watkins. So definitely keep an eye on that, and especially with their running back situation, in a ton of jeopardy, really. We talked about it last week a little bit with LaShawn McCoy. He dealt with his offseason problems, and he's also oft injured. And then now Carlos Williams, just like Le'Veon Bell, he wanted to be like his idol. He's suspended without pay for the first 4 games of the season this year. So with all those running back situations in Meyer and Buffalo, having Sammy Watkins healthy is going to be super important. And if he does come in ready to go, he's going to be a great fantasy player. Moving down south, the Texans' Braxton Miller, he's saying that he can play any position. Now, I'd like to go back to a couple weeks ago. This is exactly what I said. Braxton Miller he can do anything. At Ohio State, he played quarterback for 3 years and then made the transition to wide receiver. But he's that talented of an athlete that he really can do anything. Now the Texans are saying they're really going to focus right now on making him the wide receiver first. That's what they drafted him for. And, he really is. He played it 1 year in Ohio State. But if he can really pick up on the NFL offense, I really think they move him along. And I think because he's that quarterback, he's a smarter player. And I'm not saying players are dumb, but you have to be a little bit smarter to play quarterback. So, running routes, I think he'll pick up on that pretty quick. And I think Braxton Miller is a player that the Texans are going to utilize. And that offense, if Brock Osweiler can be even a decent starting quarterback, that offense could be really high-powered, because with the signing of Lamar Miller, you now have a running back who isn't always going to be, a groin injury away from missing the rest of the season. And then with Braxton Miller, they also drafted Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins. They still have Jalen Strong. They have a ton of weapons on that team. And Braxton Miller is definitely going to be a part of that. So I like him as a sleeper, kind of like CJ Prosise. I like the talent that he brings to the team and the ways that the team can use him, because the more that a team can use you in different ways, the more points that they can get you for fantasy. If you're not just getting points for receptions or receiving yards, you're getting yards for an end around, or they may even just line you up in the backfield and have you go out. Braxton Miller, he's a quarterback. You never know. Maybe he's going to throw a touchdown. I think the sky really is the limit. I'm not saying he's going to be an amazing super athlete like Des Bryant or Odell Beckham Jr. Those guys are true wide receivers. I think Braxton Miller, though, has the ability to do a lot of things and help out his team and fantasy owners. The Vikings, Jerick McKinnon, obviously Adrian Peterson has that spot locked up until he starts to break down, which I'm convinced the dude is a robot and he's going to play until, his CPU crashes. But Jerick McKinnon, they're saying that he's primed for a larger role in 2016. He hasn't had a ton of work. He's had some spot work when AP goes down for a couple plays. But at the end of last season, if you want to look just at the last couple of games, they started using him more. They really used him as a pass catching back, which I think Jerick McKinnon you want to look for in PPR leagues, because he has the ability to he comes out and it's like Theo Riddick. He doesn't have a great stat day, but if you can get 4 or 5 catches, maybe 50 yards, that's decent enough for a flex play. And especially if you are in PPR leagues, if you're in larger leagues where the pickings are really slim, Jerick McKinnon could end up being a starter in a PPR league. But definitely watch his progress through training camp. And then another big signing this week, we talked about it on the Doc and Jock show. Arian Foster, he was saying he was going to work out with the Miami Dolphins and with the Detroit Lions, but he obviously got down to South Beach and realized he didn't want to leave. So he signed the deal there in Miami. And as much as I was interested in the Dolphins running back situation before, this makes me much less... I don't really want to touch it as much as I do. Jay Ajayi was an interesting running back. I'm not sure if he was really ready to take the reins. And I really like Kenyon Drake, the rookie running back that they selected for PPR leagues, because I think he is a pass catching threat. I like him just as a pure running back. He reminds me of those tall running backs like AP that come out of college. He reminds me of a TJ Yeldon who came out of Alabama as well. So you put Arian Foster in the mix, and it really just mucks everything up. It slows everything down. And now, obviously, Arian Foster coming back from his own injury, but it's just going to be a big ball of uncertainty the entire year. You're never sure who's going to be the starting running back, unless Ajayi comes out and completely proves that he is the starting running back. They made the right decision in letting Lamar Miller go. it's going to be a running back by committee, and it may just be, ride the hot hand. So if Aaron Foster is doing good one week, they ride him. If Ajayi is doing good, ride him. If Kenyon Drake is doing good, ride him. So it's a true running back by committee, and it's going to frustrate the hell out of fantasy owners. So it almost makes it undesirable to really own those guys, unless you're going to grab multiple guys, either an Ajayi and a Foster, or one of those two and Kenyon Drake. Moving on to another running back situation that seems to be getting murkier as weeks go on. The Chicago Bears, it was really looked at, they let Matt Forte go for whatever reason. They're letting go one of the best running backs they've had in a long time. And essentially giving the keys to the car to Jeremy Langford, who I really like, but apparently it's coming out that the coaches and the team looks like it may be going to riding the hot hand. And as Jeremy Langford, I think he's at more of a speed back. I think they also now have a short yardage back in Jordan Howard. So you're going to see Langford and Howard, it may be the Mike Tolbert situation where Langford gets you down to the 4-yard line, but then they bring in Jordan Howard to punch it into the end zone. And it's a touchdown vulture, and it's gonna kill fantasy teams. They've been saying that Kadeem Carey may be getting some work in this offense. So you're really gonna have to monitor that situation. I still like Jeremy Langford, and I've even said that I was unsure if he can really make that transition. And now, obviously, the Bears don't feel as comfortable about him as well. So you're definitely watch that situation. And really, Jeremy Langford and Jordan Howard are both. You should draft both of those guys in your fantasy drafts. You want some more bad running back situations? Let's move on down to Jacksonville, where last year you saw T.J. Yeldon kind of emerge as a really good running back, and then they went out and they signed Chris Ivory. So now, again, it's tons of running back committee. I know it's the way of the league, but it kills fantasy players. I'm not going to argue what they do, but I wish they'd have more of those true running backs. You don't see that too often. You see guys like Adrian Peterson. Those are the last players who I think are true every down backs. We may have a slight resurgence. You see guys like Todd Gurley, even Ezekiel Elliott, who could be really workhorse backs. But nowadays, you need running backs to be both the pass catcher and the running and the pounding running back if they're going to be those every down backs. And I know there's questions about T.J. Yeldon, but I don't think one season was enough to really judge that. And he did have a decent season last year, but obviously bringing in Chris Ivory, it's going to be RBBC, running back by committee. I'm saying that a ton, and you're going to have to draft both of those guys and just hope that you make the right decision. And again, closing out the news, more running back by committee, talking about my Detroit Lions. Obviously, Amir Abdullah, when healthy, he's likely to be the all-purpose back, the guy that they go to the majority of the time. And then you have Theo Riddick, who I think he could see as much time as Amir Abdullah, but he's more going to be that receiving threat. And definitely he has more value in PPR. But now they're saying that Stephen Ridley could even cut into that time that Amir Abdullah has, which I've been outspoken about it. I do not like Stephen Ridley. I think he's a fumbling problem where we already have a fumbling problem with Amir Abdullah. I would much rather see Zach Zenner or rookie Dwayne Washington compete for this third running back position than give it to this. They're basically giving it to him because the GM, he has a knowledge of him because he was with the Patriots before. But it's another situation you're going to have to watch throughout the preseason. And you may even have to watch the games just to really get a feel of what these players look like. Because if Ridley comes out and he looks like a slow running back, then I think he's more on the roster bubble than people think. But if he comes out, if he's dependable, obviously he's going to be going up against second and third string defenses, so you would hope that he would look like a really good running back. But if he comes out and looks like a dud, I wouldn't see him making this roster. But that's also just a fleeting hope of my own. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I have a really special thing for you. We have Yahoo Sports fantasy expert Brad Evans. I'm going to talk with him about fantasy football, get some insight on draft and where you should draft people. I want him to convince me why we should draft David Johnson so high. So when we come back, Brad Evans, you're listening to the Fantasy Nerd Show on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. The Fantasy Nerd Show is sponsored by the Fan Up Network. They've developed the ultimate fantasy football app. It's a one-stop shop for everything you need. You can track teams and scores across multiple platforms, get latest injury and player news, and access to expert advice. See the hot trends with waiver pickups and drops. It has everything you need to manage all your fantasy football teams. Android users can get the app in the Play Store, and an iPhone version is now available in the App Store. Go to fanupnetwork.com to learn more and follow them on Twitter at fanupnetwork. Welcome back to the Fantasy Nerd Show. Big thanks to Fan Up Network for sponsoring. We're on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. And joining me now is 8-time award-winning Yahoo Sports author. You can also see him on Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live Sundays during the NFL season. And follow him on Twitter at Yahoo Noise. Brad Evans. How's it going, Brad? Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Draft season. Right around the corner. I'm not wearing pants right now because I'm so excited that I'm going to be in some for real drafts, although I've been in a few already.
I know you were saying you've been in some industry drafts, but obviously for all the listeners out there, I mean, when's the perfect time to actually hold your fantasy football draft?
Well, I mean, the closer to the start of the regular season, the better. Labor Day weekend, I think, is ideal for a lot of people. It's because you've seen the preseason. We've trimmed down the rosters. You've avoided the possibility of drafting the Jordy Nelson injury, stuff like that, people experienced last year. So, the closer you get to the season, the better, because you just limit the margin for error and the possibility of injury and already destroying your fantasy hopes before, the first football is teed up officially.
I totally agree. And that kind of leads me into my first question. Looking back at last year, there was a ton of injuries to big name players. Jordy Nelson, Kelvin Benjamin, Des Bryant, Jamal Charles, just to name a few. Which of these guys do you think are going to have bounce back years, and who do you think might be losing a step?
Well, I think out of that group that you mentioned, Jordy Nelson's the safest of the bunch. I think he's a player, obviously tied to a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and he's got great weapons around him to help, as a complement to keep the pressure off. Randall Cobb being there, and they had Jared Cook to try to help out on seam routes up the middle. Not to say that Jared Cook is an outstanding weapon, but somebody that is decent in a pinch. You hope that Eddie Lacy, no longer fat, but fit Eddie Lacy after the P90X. Hopefully he's given little Debbie the stiff arm, and, she's no longer in his future plans, and he's going to continue on, staying ripped, in shape, and really adding balance to that offense. But I think ultimately Nelson's a great shot for, close to what he did in 2014. 90 catches, 1,400 yards, double-digit touchdowns. A guy with an average draft position of 16.2 right now. So you're getting in, the early to the middle portion of round 2. I would draft him there all diggity day long if available. So I think he bounces back the biggest. The guy out of a couple of guys out of the group that I am down on, the other two that you mentioned, Kelvin Benjamin. There've been rumors of this wide receiver by committee, which I think is a funny term because I think all receiving cores are by committee.
Right.
That is being talked about in Carolina, but I talked to some insiders there recently, and Devin Funchess has had a tremendous offseason. Of course, a full offseason under his belt, coming off his rookie campaign, in which he made tremendous strides as the season wore on. he's going to play a bigger role than people think. So I think it's going to eat into Kelvin Benjamin's workload. This is still a relatively conservative offense. A lot of Cam near the goal line, a lot of Jonathan Stewart between the 20s, and Greg Olson's still there, Mr. Consistency. So I think Kelvin Benjamin's being overdrafted right now at his ADP in the early 40s, late 30s in average draft. And I do have some concern about Jamal Charles, too. Second major knee procedure in the last 5 years. There's whispers that Spencer Ware could become the red zone option for Andy Reid, more of a committee approach this season. I don't see Charles averaging more than, say, 15 or 16 touches per game, given the injury downside, given the fact that he's getting closer to 30, given the fact that Ware could be a goal line gremlin. He's a guy at his ADP, which is RB7, 19.3 overall. I'm avoiding like the plague.
Now, a consensus first-round pick, and I know you actually have ranked him as high as number 1 for running backs, Cardinals running back David Johnson. Please convince me why we should be taking a guy who didn't break 100 all-purpose yards in a game until Week 13, and 5 of his 12 total touchdowns came in 2 games.
Right. Well, if you look at what happened, he didn't become a full-time guy until about Week 12 last season. So he was a guy that was marvelous in spurts, terribly underutilized as Chris Johnson was being run into the ground, quite literally, and, was broken as a result of it late in the season. But Johnson was that, multi-gadgeted Swiss Army knife, a guy that was doing it on special teams, receiver in the backfield, getting some of those tough yards between the tackles. You look at the yards after contact, extraordinary. Look at the tackles avoided per attempt, also extraordinary. The guy has an elite skill set. And here's the one thing, I usually don't play into coach speak too often, but the thing about Bruce Arians is he's a straight shooter. If you've interviewed the guy at any time in your life, he's going to tell like it is. He doesn't care. And he has been quoted as saying that he believes that David Johnson, and these are his words, not mine, could be an all-time great.
Wow.
That's how talented he is. Mike Jarecki, who I know well, who's very plugged in there in Arizona, covering for Fox Sports 910, the team. He's come out and said that he believes that David Johnson will get at least 60% of the workload. I talked to another Arizona Cardinals insider on my radio show recently, and he said at a minimum 70%. So let's say you go the average of 65%, that's going to be around 300 total touches based on last year's workload that the RBBC put together between Ellington, Johnson, and Johnson. And I think David, given his skill set, given the fact that he's going to be the bell cow, given the fact that the Arizona offense is explosive, given the fact that the Arizona offensive line ranked top 10 last season in run blocking, and it just checks so many boxes. I don't see how he is not at least a top 3 running back, if not the best running back in fantasy when it's all said and done this year.
Now, I feel like we saw this story last season play out with C.J. Anderson. He finished out the previous year.
Different scenario. Now, here's the reason why. That offensive line in Denver, I live in Denver, okay? I know this team forwards and backwards, so I'm a diehard Bears fan. That offensive line had serious concerns last season to the Denver Broncos. And Anderson, not only was he felled by the inefficiency of that offensive line, he was nicked and scraped with myriad injuries pretty much all year long. Starting around week 2, week 3, that's why you saw more Ronnie Hillman at times, because Anderson just wasn't effective. Well, when he got healthy and the offensive line started cooking in the playoffs, Anderson played great. So I think you've got to look at it on a case-by-case basis. On paper right now, Arizona's situation leap years ahead of where the Broncos were offensively, not only the line, but also just the offense in general. Carson Palmer, even though he's long in the tooth, he didn't look like a decrepit old man like Peyton Manning did last season. And Brock Osweiler, though, he was moderately effective, a marginal player, which helped kind of, ignite this offense at times last season. He still pales in comparison when you look at Carson Palmer. So I think they're 2 completely different scenarios. And I think it's, and I've written about this before, I think it's dangerous for people to assume that David Johnson, C.J. Anderson Part 2, because they're just, it's entirely different situation.
Well, I feel a little bit better drafting David Johnson.
Only slightly.
Only slightly. I'm more of a see it before I believe it guy. But the key to drafting a good team is trying to find those gems outside of the first couple of rounds who happen to blow out, who blow up. So who are a couple players on your radar who are poised for breakout seasons this year?
Well, let's look at a guy that is a post-hype sleeper, and that's Melvin Gordon. Everybody is avoiding him, left and right. I mean, it's insane how much he has been discounted right now in early drafts. I think there are people out there that would rather come down with a horrible case of explosive diarrhea than draft Melvin Gordon. You look at his ADP, he's RB32, 84.3 overall. Look, I understand the superficial numbers last season. The guy averaged 3.5 yards per carry. He didn't find the end zone one time. But I watched a lot of tape on him, and there were a number of different times. In fact, 8.1% of his carries last season went for 10 yards or more. That's a respectable number when comparing it to other players. He was just one cut away from taking it to the house. There were a lot of shoestring tackles where that second-level defender somehow got a paw on him and tripped him up. I know Danny Woodhead is there and lurking, but Danny Woodhead is in his 30s. He's not a spring chicken anymore. This team did not bring in a veteran back. They did not draft another running back. It is Melvin Gordon's show through and through. And I know what you're saying, the offensive line, a bunch of Casper the Friendly Ghosts, very transparent. But they were, embattled by injuries and ineptitude last season. They're going to get healthy. They've got 8 fresh faces in training camp on the offensive line to try to find the best guys and weed out the rubbish. If they can gel quickly, and you got Keenan Allen back, you got a very good quarterback in Phillip Rivers there. You got Travis Benjamin to take on that Malcolm Floyd role to stretch the field. And Gordon, a guy that's probably going to be a high-volume rusher. He may get 18 touches per game. Remember, his role in the pass game grew. I think it could be a breakout campaign, and he is the most undervalued running back right now in fantasy drafts. And if you want to go real deep, a guy that I have been singing the praises of, not because I'm a graduate of the University of Illinois, but because I like where he landed, and I like the opportunity that's presented in front of him, and that's Josh Ferguson of the Indianapolis Colts. It's only a matter of time before he leapfrogs Jordan Todman and Robert Turbin, who was recently arrested with a marijuana charge. So he's going to go into the league's, protocol in regards to that. He's going to be the direct backup to Frank Gore, and I think he's going to be kind of a Dion Lewis, Theo Riddick type on the field, where you're going to see him on the field probably 45 to 55% of the time, even with Gore sometimes in the backfield. Very talented kid, not real tough between the tackles, but phenomenal in space. He's got one of the sickest spin moves you'll ever see. He's a juke master. I could see him in a PPR setting. So if you're in one of those leagues, Ferguson's a guy worth extending that go-go gadget arm for and getting, because I think he's going to catch at least 50 balls this year.
Well, he's definitely going to go on my radar, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a question about my hometown team. And you actually just put out an article about the Detroit Lions.
Yep.
I undoubtedly always draft a couple of them. Is there anybody that we could expect great things from this year?
Yeah, I think it's Golden Tate. A lot of people are on the fence about him because he's an undersized receiver, but he plays like a running back. And I don't think there's a more dynamic player after the catch in the league. Maybe Antonio Brown because of his explosiveness. He's more of a finesse speed guy. But in terms of breaking tackles, then Golden Tate. The guy's incredibly strong, elephant strong. And, you don't have Calvin Johnson there to ease the pressure off of him. But, he had 18 red zone targets last season, which was top 15 at the wide receiver position. With Calvin, right now playing shuffleboard at Shady Acres retirement home somewhere in Florida, you suspect that some of those 18 red zone targets that Calvin had last season will rotate to the side of Golden Tate and land in his column. I know Marvin Jones is there. I know Marvin Jones has performed previously in red zone situations with Cincinnati being a double-digit touchdown guy a couple of years ago. But I think Tate is just he's going to see so many targets, just oodles of them, probably 150 plus, that he's a strong candidate for 100 catches, well over 1,000 yards. And I think he's going to post career highs in the touchdown category. I think he's going to be an 8-touchdown receiver his previous career high is 7 in that category. So, you're getting in that pick right around pick number 32 overall, wide receiver 20 off the board. I think he's a little bit undervalued at that cost, particularly in a points per reception league. The backfield's interesting as well with Amir Abdullah. I was head over heels for Amir Abdullah last season.
I think all
he
of
was
Detroit was head over heels over Amir Abdullah.
I mean, seriously, I would understand if you're, removing your belt, watching him in the preseason. The guy was seducing.
Yes.
In terms of his moves, people are saying, "Oh man, it kind of looks like some dude named Barry Sanders the way he shimmies and shakes in the open field." And you're making those hyperbolic comparisons. I fell in love, no question about it. I liked what he did at Nebraska during his years there. Very productive back, 3-down back. What bit him was just the fact that he couldn't hang on to the football. So got in the doghouse on the sidelines. Now he's got every opportunity to rectify the situation. Good news is Arian Foster, even though he had flirtations with Detroit, them signing with Miami, unless they bring in another back, which I don't think they're going to, I think Abdullah's going to head up the committee, probably get around 13 to 15 touches per game, and maybe be a 1,100, 1,200 total yard, 5 to 7 touchdown running back. And a guy you're getting is the RB30 right now in average draft. So I think he's a little bit undervalued. And then Stafford, people are really discounting him. I've seen him go as late as QB20, QB21 in some drafts because everybody's freaking out. Oh, you don't have a Hall of Fame wide receiver to throw to anymore. You got Golden Tate, Marvin Jones. There's going to be this precipitous drop-off in production. But here's the thing about Detroit. Defense still stinks. And one thing we know about Stafford, he's pretty much good for 610 every single year. I don't see that changing. And with Jim Bob Cooter, strumming the washboard and calling the plays, I think he's a guy that's going to get the most bang for his buck out of Matt Stafford this year.
Well, hopefully some fantasy success can actually translate to some success on the field for the Lions. But one last thing.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I know that we may be passed out by that time. But one last thing before I let you go. What is the single most important piece of advice that you would give to fantasy owners going into the season?
Well, and I'll say this going into the draft season, don't be married to a strategy. I see people go in and say, I'm going 0 RB all day long. I'm going to be sitting there in round 7. I'm going to have at least 6 beers in my system. And at that point, only because my guard is down, will I invest in a running back. Don't be that guy or girl, in
that's
that
a bold
situation.
Strategy.
Well, there are people that seriously adhere to it. A lot of people in the analyst community that adhere to it. It's all about values, guys. As you know, when you're in a draft, if a player falls to you, like I was in an exercise recently, and there's little greenbacks on the line among some fanalists, and Ezekiel Elliott in a full-point PPR league, I'm picking 11. I'm thinking there's no way in hell I'm going to get him. I got him there. If I was the 0 RB guy, I would say, I'm passing up on that value. I'm going to take a wide receiver instead, or I'm going to go Gronk instead. That would be a terrible mistake to make. It's all about values. So just go in with an open mind. Don't go in with a specific strategy and just wait for the best players to fall to you and take the best player available when it's your pick, period, end of story.
Really appreciate you coming on the show. Brad, where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me. Come harass me on Twitter at Yahoo Noise. Of course, sign up for a Yahoo Fantasy game. It's open for business right now. Go to sports.yahoo.com/fantasy. Also, my work located at the exact same URL, sports.yahoo.com/fantasy as well. The Roto Arcade blog. We're cranking out stuff every single weekday from now until pretty much the end of the year. So if you're a fantasy aficionado, at least self-proclaimed or wannabe, or if you just want to get your feet wet in preparation for the draft season, we got you covered. So please come by and visit. And by all means, sling mud my direction. I'll sling it right back at you.
Well, big thanks for coming on the show. Maybe we can have you on later on in the season.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Anytime.
All right, have a good one.
All right, take it easy. Thank you.
That was Brad Evans from Yahoo Sports. When we come back, we'll have the King's Decree. You're listening to the Fantasy Nerds on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Welcome back to the Fantasy Nerd Show. Big thanks to Yahoo Sports' Brad Evans for coming on the show.
Hopefully we can have him later on in the season to give us some more insight into fantasy football. We're just about done with this episode, but I can't leave you without giving you my King's Decree. My King's Decree last week, I'm going to end this show like I opened it, talking about Le'Veon Bell, the Pittsburgh Steeler, who just can't seem to get on the field, whether it's injury or whether it's suspension. Now, in a lot of mock drafts, he is looked at as a first-round draft pick. But my King's Decree, Le'Veon Bell should not be a first-round pick. And the reasoning behind that is, when you're looking for a player in your first round, if you can't hit on that first-round player, it's going to affect your team. If the running back or the wide receiver you take, if he just completely falls off the map, it kills your fantasy season. Unless you can somehow move him before the injury happens, then that's the only way that I would promote drafting him first round. And if you do, I would hope that you're getting some really good value in return. But again, I just think he's going to miss the first 4 games unless for some reason the suspension gets reduced, which I don't really see happening. He had a suspension reduced last year from 3 games to 2 games. So he's going to miss the first 4 games. Coming back from the MCL, PCL, he has been known to be injury prone in his rookie season. I think he dealt with knee injuries almost the entire season. And then you look at the one good season that he really had, 2014, played 16 games. He was more valuable in PPR leagues because he's had a 1 rushing touchdown in the first game of the season, and he didn't have another rushing touchdown until week 11. I think he had 2 receiving touchdowns in that span, but in 11 games, you're talking only 4 touchdowns from a guy who we now think as a first-round draft pick. It's going to hurt you. Now, obviously, with PPR, it keeps him high up in the standings, but if you're in a standard league, it kills you. So that's why I don't think that he should necessarily be looked at in the first round. I think somebody will probably reach, but if you can lay off him, I think he has a lot better value in that early to middle part of the second round, because then, you know what? You've already got your first round pick, and you got that locked down. And at the second round, you know that you're not going to have him for the first 4 games, and there's the possibility that he misses some time somewhere else in the season. But I feel a lot better knowing that I already have one guy that I'm putting my team on its shoulders, and that Le'Veon Bell doesn't have to be that bell cow. And especially high in the draft, if you're taking Le'Veon Bell with the 3rd pick, you have to wait, another almost 18 to 20 picks, depending on the size of your league, to get your second player. So that's why Le'Veon Bell, I love the guy, I love Sparty, but dude, you can't miss a drug test. You've already been suspended once, and now you're suspended again. You're hurting your own team, you're hurting your own value, and you're killing fantasy football owners. So that's why Le'Veon Bell should not be drafted in the first round. And that is the King's Decree. That's going to do it for this episode of the show. Next week, we'll have more news. Hopefully, I can get my brother back on the episode. He had to do some family stuff, but hopefully we can get him on the episode, and we can just chat some more about fantasy football. Training camps a lot of them will be starting up. I know the Lions are starting next Friday, so we can get into all that talk. And, dude, football, just not even fantasy football. Football's almost here. I'm so pumped. I hope you're pumped. I'm so glad that you are listening to these episodes, and I want to help you win your fantasy leagues. So that's it for me. I'm Jason Jarvie. Follow me on Twitter @JarvieTheKing. Until next week, later, nerds.